Okay, so I want to attempt to bring this full circle. I've mentioned the PII report. The PII report was published March 11th, 2016. It's called the ABWE and Don Ketchum Investigation and Final Report. I'm going to pull out some page numbers and some quotes. This is PII page 144. A conference call on October 5th, 2015 with PII investigators. ABWE President Dr. D. Jim O'Neill stated that ABWE wanted the truth to come out through the PII investigation, and the investigation should take whatever amount of time is needed to get to the truth. PII page 130, it says, quote, "The investigation findings are that ABWE has for decades, up to and including during this investigation, created a culture of obfuscation and deceit when it served the purposes of protecting an individual or the organization. The courage to fully embrace the truth has rarely been demonstrated." October 22nd, 2015, 17 days after Jim O'Neill's very interested in the truth about ancient history of 1989 and before, he's not told or interested in what's going on true right under his nose. PII page 192, root causes. This is 1 and 2. There existed a prevailing attitude towards authorities in evangelical circles, primarily that there was a spirituality standard that required unquestioning compliance with authority. This attitude prevented the development of healthy systems of checks and balances and openness to corrective actions. Critical thinking skills were suspended. 2, there exists a focus on ministry as being the top priority. Individual needs and voices tended to be dismissed in the service of the greater good, i.e., ministry and the spread of the gospel. So it's April 16, 2015. Phil McMillan has traveled to the Gambia between the 23rd and the 25th. He has gone back to Togo, West Africa. We have been dismissed from the field. We are leaving April 25th. Our tickets are in place. This is Phil McMillan's closing of his letter written to our pastor on April 16th. What is the most important issue here? That the gospel and the name of Jesus Christ be lifted high among the wool of people through the lives and life practices of our ABWE team. Right now, that's not happening. May God bring all of our furloughing missionaries back spiritually healthy and eager to love and serve the wool of people. That's my prayer for you. PII page 203. For the ABWE organization as a whole, the order to not discuss also meant that the actions of those in authority could not be discussed, questioned, supported, or challenged. This allowed a state of near dictatorship to flourish, not allowing for the checks and balances that any healthy organization needs. Page 197. It appears that ABWE is still trying to keep abuse or alleged abuse hidden and in-house. The FFIT, as defined in their footnotes, is composed of people not qualified to do an investigation of child abuse allegations. Also, it is not CST's, Child Safety Team, responsibility to determine reasonable belief. Any allegation is to be reported by law. In addition to in-house people having too many competing agendas and judgmental personal opinions to make an objective assessment. I want you to understand that ABWE built an in-house resource. It's called Best Resources for Protecting Children. Talks about prevention. It lists a lot of different websites on this document. This document was written December 7th, 2015. I'm looking at it on my screen, and it says, talk about reporting, and there's a summary of ABWE interim policy for child protection, and then it also has a website, www.ilookoutforchildabuse.com. Okay, and this document has a reference, it's a PDF, and they reference it to this document. This document, this PDF website was looked up on April 29th, 2015. The 29th of April, right here, the 29th of April, okay? We are back in the United States. We flew back in on Saturday the 25th, and the Lippies are still in the Gambia until the middle of May. They fly out most likely May 5th. So this internal document built December 7th, 2015, after the inquiry into suspected child abuse in the Gambia comes out. But this resource was gathered and found on April 29th, 2015. Here's what the document says. This is an internal document known by the Child Safety Committee. Reporting within ABWE. Question 1, is the victim an ABWE MK? Question 2, is the alleged offender an ABWE MK? Question 3, is the alleged offender an ABWE missionary or employee? If you can answer yes to any of these questions, contact one of the following: Nancy Hepworth, Child Safety Officer, at her email. The phone number they give is office 717-909-2321. It also says Dwayne Early, Vice President of Global Operations, and his email, dwayne@abwe.org. It also says the other person you can contact is your regional administrator. That says reporting to legal authorities. For help in reporting to legal authorities in your area, contact one of the following: Sharon Martin, Legal Coordinator, or Nancy Hepworth, Child Safety Officer, 717-909-2321. This is December 2015. This document is written. So the website they reference on April 29th, 2015, here's the statement. You are a mandatory reporter, and as such, 1, you are required to report suspected child abuse if you have reasonable cause to suspect that abuse has occurred, and or someone lets you know about an identifiable child having been abused, even if this is told to you when you are not at your workplace. This webpage is from 2014 Center for the Protection of Children, Penn State Children's Hospital. This document was available to Nancy Hepworth, Tim Hepworth, Ron Washer, Phil McMillan, Dwayne Early, and all the child safety team before the Lippies left the field in May 2015. So now I want to talk about this letter written November 23rd, 2016. Dr. E. Allen Cockrell wrote this letter. We've talked about it once. We're talking about it again. Does December 2015 come before November 23rd, 2016? Does the child safety team have access to this information? The answer, of course, is yes. So here's what Dr. E. Allen Cockrell says. The inquiry was completed and not reported for the following reason. Based upon the preponderance of the evidence, the inquiry found that Caleb Lippy did not physically abuse, did not emotionally abuse, and did not bully our children. The report was reviewed by our attorney, who was in agreement with the conclusions. It says above that, we met with the child safety team that conducted the inquiry. Who had access to this information? On April 29th, 2015, the team that received and conducted the inquiry, that interviewed 17 people connected with the Gambia. So they know based on the document they're providing in December that was retrieved on April 29th, 2015, that they are indeed mandatory reporters. Let me assure you that the word mandatory reporter has never, not one time, come out of the mouth of Phil McMillan, Ron Washer, Tim Hepworth, Nancy Hepworth, Dwayne Earley, Dr. E. Allen Cockrell, or Paul Davis. Not one time have they said the word mandatory reporter. The PII report, page 174, the lead dog, Wendell Kempton, tells you what to do, and you go do it. And if it's Wendell Kempton's dirty work, you go do it. On October 22nd, 2015, what did they know and when did they know it? Let's list the people one more time. Vice President Dwayne Earley, Area Director Ron Washer, Regional Administrator Phil McMillan, Team Leader Keith Lippy, Keith Lippy's wife Michelle, Keith Lippy's son Caleb Lippy, Tim and Nancy Hepworth. So what do you do when caught in a lie? Stop lying and start telling the truth. Stop lying and don't tell the truth, or keep lying. What's the definition of deception? Deception is creating a false impression using omission of facts or commission of a false statement. What did all these people know on October 22nd? Looking through their eyes, through their knowledge, through what they knew to be true. Did they not know the law of Pennsylvania? Did they not know the policies? Did they not know how things actually work? What is going on at ABWE October 22nd, 2015 that's not going on today? I want to talk about the use of Matthew 18. So the question I would ask is, Phil McMillan, Ron Washer, Keith Lippy, Dan Byram, Frank Weirman, and the leadership at ABWE aware of Matthew 18? That sounds sarcastic, but the question, of course, it's a no-brainer. Of course they're aware of how Matthew 18, 15 to 17 is supposed to work, and how as Christian brothers we're supposed to work together to try to solve these problems. When there are sins, they need to be addressed. Would we agree? So there really is no question. Of course they know how to do it. We go all the way back to December of 2014. We have all gone to the home office, flown back from the Gambia for team meetings that lasted 10 days from December 3rd to December 10th. In that meeting, we were tasked with choosing a new team leader. It was predisposed that Keith Lippy would be that team leader. So we had meetings and conversations, and along the way, we were supposed to give the thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down if we had a problem with something in the process. And at one point, one of our teammates gave the thumbs down. Their complaint was something to do with personal and interpersonal conflict between them and Keith Lippy. So here's what happened. Phil McMillan stopped our meeting. He asked Harry Gebert, a friend of the Gambia, someone who has served in the Gambia, someone well respected in ABWE, to take Keith and Michelle and this teammate aside into a private room and to do a discussion, basically to have a mediator. If you understand how Matthew 18, 15 to 17 works, this will be kind of step 2. Clearly these two people couldn't work it out. It came up here. Now we're having someone help work it out. So that's what they did. And they must have worked it out to some level. Then there was also a conflict between me and the same teammate. It also came up in this meeting. I brought it up because I was asked to bring it up. And here's what Phil McMillan did. He stopped the meeting. He asked Harry Gebert, me and my wife, and Keith Lippy this time, and this teammate to go aside and to work out this difficulty. Again, 2 illustrations of Matthew 18, 15 to 17. As Tim Hepworth said in June when he was asking us, he said, I was a little confused. Let me get this straight. You had a meeting with Phil on Monday. The Lippys had a meeting with Phil on Tuesday. And then the question, and there was a group meeting? No group meeting. Why? That's the question, isn't it? Why did Phil McMillan not do Matthew 18 or even attempt it while on the field? Well, let's just compare the differences. In the Home Office, Phil McMillan's superiors were watching. In the Gambia, Phil McMillan's superiors were not watching. At the Home Office, Phil McMillan is not the leader. In the Gambia, Phil McMillan was the leader. At the Home Office, they set aside private conversations. But in the Gambia, it was about secret conversations. At the Home Office, there was no isolation. There were plenty of resources. But in the Gambia, we were isolated with very few resources. Phil does not get involved in the mediation at ABWE, but Phil is the mediator in the Gambia. The outcome at ABWE is supposed to be mutual restoration of relationships. The outcome in the Gambia is supposed to be mutual benefit, punishment for one side and benefit for the other. Those are the huge differences between those two things. Does Phil McMillan know about Matthew 18? Of course he does. But he doesn't do Matthew 18 because that doesn't fit his paradigm. It won't help him with his preconceived agenda. So under ABWE's reporting complaints, this is under the harassment document, it says any employee who is involved in, witnesses, or becomes aware of any act which might be considered harassment under the policy is permitted, but not required, to pursue resolution of the conduct according to biblical principle. Regardless, nothing in this clause alters the obligation to make timely reports, and all reports made under this policy will be handled timely and equally. Further down in this same policy, it says all acts of suspected harassment should be reported in good faith. ABWE will not retaliate in any way against any individual making a good faith report of harassment, nor will ABWE permit any supervisor, agent, officer, or employee to do so. Retaliation is a serious violation of this harassment policy and should be reported immediately. So herein lies the problem. Phil McMillan, before he arrived in the Gambia, had determined a course of action. He wasn't sure what exactly that course of action would be, but he was fairly certain the problem was on the Byram side of the equation, and that the team leader should be protected at all costs. So Phil McMillan goes through a gyration of pretense that he is doing things equitably and above board. But behind the scenes, that is not true. So he quickly determines that I am not going to be manipulated into his box, that I am going to stand my ground and continue to assert the facts and the truth, that there was a fist fight, it was violence, and it should be dealt with. Phil McMillan determined, based on his own writings, but based on March 25th as the date, that there was no violence. It didn't rise to the level of legal practical. It didn't matter. There was nothing to do here. Nothing at all. The real problem became Dan Byram. Understand that Phil McMillan discovered I had these problems, spiritual foundation issues, philosophy of ministry issues, anger lurking under the surface, somewhere between March 16th and March 25th, and probably before he arrived. So here's how Phil McMillan worked. The first thing he needed to do is he needed to secure more allies. So he talks to Barney Robeson. Barney Robeson is apparently on his side. Barney Robeson is not a witness to anything that takes place around these children. And he decides that Barney Robeson should send an email to Teresa Stenoyan and Deb Newsom, and Barney contacts Bethany Caldwell. So Barney is involved in this. Barney's further involved on the 23rd when they keep the secrets. Phil McMillan has an ally. Who are the other allies? Well, he's hoping to get allies from Teresa Stenoyan and Deb Newsom. We're going to tell them what to think and then tell them to shut up. The problem with that is that Phil McMillan ran up against, again, people with character. Teresa Stenoyan told us the story of the email, otherwise we would not know it to this day. But we do know it. Phil McMillan knows it. Ron Washer knows it. Barney Robeson knows it. So Teresa tells about the email, and she says that basically here's what they were told by Keith Lippy, somewhere probably the 25th or 26th. of March. The decision had nothing to do with the boys. The Byrams are going home, and we're not going to talk about it anymore. Period. And somewhere along the line, it became obvious, through whether it be through Ron Washer and Phil McMillan talking, or whether it be through the Child Safety Committee, or what the answers were. It became obvious that the Lippies were also going to need to be sent home because their son is 18 and he did actually engage in violence. And there's nothing written down that has exonerated him at this stage. This is called a cover-up. We're just going to wash this away with secrets. So Dan Byram is sent home for counseling, and the Lippies get a mysterious medical leave. And all of that should take care of it. On the Lippy side, we're protecting Caleb, we're protecting Keith, we're protecting Michelle. Their reputation is intact. And on the Byram side, well, clearly Dan Byram needs to be either reined in or run out. So everything's been taken care of until June 10th. So here's the gap. I can't fill in all those gaps, but here's the gap. Between March 25th and June 10th, there's a gap. That gap was supposed to remain a gap. That gap was never supposed to be questioned, talked about, asked about. There should be no reason to disbelieve anything that the administration has said. But on June 10th, I sent an email copied to Dwayne Early, sent to Ron Washer. So now there's a problem. Now what do we do? Now what do we know on June 10th? We know that Nancy Hepworth has now reported this to the state of Pennsylvania. We know that Ron Washer, Phil McMillan, Keith Lippy, Michelle Lippy, and Caleb Lippy have engaged in a cover-up. That they have decided that a medical leave is valid and good. That's happened all before June 10th. So when this comes to them, what does the policy say about reporting harassment? I reported harassment on June 10. And what does Ron Washer do with that harassment? He doesn't do anything with that. He turns it over to the child safety team. Does he recognize that Phil may have done anything wrong? No, of course not. When we talked to him on July 17th by a phone call, I said that we have experienced workplace retaliation because they didn't deal with the actual events. They dealt with the event they wanted to deal with. And what does Ron Washer say? Well, I'll talk to Phil McMillan about it. But does he do anything? No. When I talked to Nancy, does she do anything? No. When she talks to Dwayne Early, does he do anything? No. What do they do with this report? This report is all about focus. 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 We need to continue to deny that there has been any child abuse. We need to continue to bury and cover up the actual decisions made so that when this report comes out, it kills any possible thought of reporting this to anyone, anywhere. So the report is actually designed to be a retaliation document, an intimidation document, an obstruction of justice document. It is designed to shut our mouths and to convince us that we are wrong and they are right. That's the purpose of the document. The stage has been set. You can now hear what I'm telling you through the report. When they actually get to the meat of their argument, you will be able to understand what they're trying to accomplish and what they're not trying to accomplish. This report was written and researched and advanced to meet the agenda decided by Phil McMillan on March 25th. And there was never, ever going to be a different outcome. That's the fact. The point here is that the leaders need to be followed, submitted to, at all cost. There is no other option. 1989 or 2020, it's the same. Different men, different leaders, same thing. It's the Wendell, Kempton, Ketchum doctrine. We protected bad actors to protect ourselves. It's the men, the mission, and the money.